My grandma's scream didn't sound human. That's what froze my blood. I turned around just in time to see our HOA, Karen gripping her wrist, twisting it backward like she was trying to snap off a tree branch. And then, I heard it. A crack, so sharp it echoed through the entire cul-de-sac. My grandma fell to the ground, shaking, clutching her arm while Karen stood over her like she'd just won some twisted battle. No apology, no fear, not even a second of hesitation. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that the woman she just hurt was the only family I had left, and that I'm the kind of person who never lets an attack slide. Especially not an attack on someone I love. But the real twist? Karen had absolutely no idea who I am, and what crossing me would unleash next. Before I take you deeper into this unbelievable story, I want to ask you, the person watching right now, backhand index pointing right, which city in the USA are you watching from? Drop your city name in the comments. I genuinely love seeing how far these stories reach. Whether you're in Phoenix, Miami, Seattle, Atlanta, New York, or anywhere in between, let me know. It helps me understand where my community is growing. Now, let's talk about what happened. What you're about to hear wasn't a simple neighbor disagreement. It wasn't a little argument, and it definitely wasn't an accident. This was intentional harm, cruel, unnecessary, and targeted. And the person behind it was someone who thinks HOA rules give her the right to control everyone's life. A woman who weaponizes regulations, acts like she owns the whole neighborhood, and believes she's untouchable because she hides behind a board and a title. But there's one thing she never expected. She had no idea who I am. No idea about my background. No idea what I've been through or what I'm capable of when someone I love is hurt. And absolutely no clue that breaking my grandma's arm would trigger a chain reaction that would flip our entire community upside down. Before we jump into the chaos and twists that followed, do me one quick favor. Backhand index pointing right, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the real stories I bring to you every week. Stories that hit harder than anything you'll see on TV. All right, now that you're here and now that you're ready, let's start this story from the exact moment everything went wrong. I still remember the exact temperature of that afternoon, the kind of dry, restless heat that makes the pavement shimmer and the air feel heavy. My grandma and I had just returned from her doctor's appointment. She walked slowly, using her favorite blue cane, the one with little white flowers painted along the sides. She always said the cane made her feel less old, like it gave her personality back. She was having a good day, laughing, talking, telling me old stories like she always did after medical checkups, just to show she wasn't scared. We parked by the curb like we always did right in front of her house. Nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing hinting at how brutally the next 60 seconds would destroy everything. As I unloaded her small grocery bags from the car, I noticed her staring ahead, her eyebrows tightening. She leaned toward me and whispered, "Oh dear, she's coming." I didn't have to look up to know who she meant. There was only one person my grandma feared in that neighborhood, Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, a woman who believed every crack in the sidewalk, every leaf on the lawn, and every trash bin slightly out of alignment was a personal insult against her kingdom. Her walk was fast, loud, and fueled by the kind of confidence only people with zero self-awareness possess. She marched toward us with a clipboard in one hand and her phone in the other, already filming like she'd caught us committing a crime. "Excuse me," she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut the air. "You can't park here. This is a restricted parking zone." I frowned. Restricted? It wasn't. Not even close. It was literally the curb in front of my grandma's house. My grandma tried to speak softly. "Honey, this is my home. He's just helping me." But Karen raised her hand like my grandma was a child who needed to be silenced. "That doesn't matter. Rules are rules. And your car is too close to the mailbox. I can fine you for that. Move it." My grandma's expression changed, not angry, not annoyed, but tired. Tired in a way only the elderly can be when they've spent years being pushed around by someone younger and meaner. She took a slow step toward Karen, not to argue, but to reason with her. "Sweetheart, please." My arm's been hurting lately. He'll unload and move the car. Just give him. Karen didn't let her finish. She stepped forward and grabbed my grandma's wrist. It happened so fast, I didn't understand what I was seeing at first. Karen twisted, hard, like she was flipping a switch. My grandma gasped, her face shrinking in pain. "Don't touch me." Karen barked, yanking her closer. "You almost hit me with your cane. I have it on camera." But she didn't, because my grandma hadn't even lifted her cane. "Let her go." I shouted, dropping the bags and sprinting toward them. But I was 2 seconds too late. 2 seconds. Just 2. A horrifying crack snapped through the air. A sound so loud and sharp it didn't even feel real. My grandma's blue cane clattered to the concrete. She stumbled sideways, her knees buckling, her palm gripping her forearm as she collapsed onto the driveway. She wasn't screaming anymore. The scream had already happened. Now she was just whimpering. Small, broken, fragile sounds I had never heard from her in my entire life. For a moment, everything froze. The air, my breathing. Even the birds on the telephone wire went quiet, like the whole world was holding its breath to understand what had just happened. Karen stepped back, her face flushed, but not with guilt. No. She looked annoyed. "Great," she said, rolling her eyes. "Now, I'm going to have to file an incident report because she attacked me." I stared at her, stunned into silence. Attacked her? My 82-year-old grandma, who could barely lift a gallon of milk? Without thinking, I knelt beside my grandma. Her skin was pale, her breathing shaky. "Grandma, can you hear me?" I whispered, touching her shoulder gently. She nodded, tears dripping down her cheeks. "My arm, honey, it hurts." I carefully lifted her hand. Her wrist was already swelling, fast. Her fingers trembled uncontrollably. My chest tightened. "You need a hospital. Right now." Behind me, Karen scoffed. "Yes, go ahead. Run to the hospital doesn't change the fact that you were both violating HOA guidelines." I turned my head slightly and looked at her. Not fully, just enough for her to see my eyes. Something in my stare made her step back. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was the cold, heavy silence inside me. Maybe it was the instinctive calm I fall into when someone I love is in danger. Or maybe it was the part of me she couldn't recognize, the part she couldn't possibly imagine I carried. "Get away from us," I said, my voice low, steady, absolutely lethal. But Karen stood her ground. "You think you can talk to me like that? I run this neighborhood. I can have you both removed. Evicted." My grandma winced, clutching my arm. "Honey, don't argue. Please just help me." I slipped my arm under hers and gently lifted her off the ground. She cried out, the pain too much, but she held on. Karen followed us like some sort of deranged supervisor. "I need your names for the report," she insisted. "I'm calling the police. I'll tell them she assaulted me." I stopped, slowly, turned my head again, met her eyes. She opened her mouth to speak, but the look I gave her made her lips tremble. Just a little. Just enough to let me know she felt something. Fear, confusion, maybe even regret. But only for a second, because she didn't know who I was. Not yet. Not even slightly. She had no idea what lines she had crossed. No idea what darkness she had just unlocked. No idea that she hadn't broken the arm of any ordinary grandma, but the only family of a man she should have never, ever provoked. And this was only the beginning. If you've never lived under a homeowners association, let me paint you a picture, not the nice, clean, brochure kind homeowners associations brag about, but the kind that runs a neighborhood like a private dictatorship. That's what our community had become. And Karen, she wasn't just a member of the HOA. She was the face of it, the loudspeaker, the enforcer, the tyrant with a clipboard. When people say HOA president, they imagine someone reasonable, someone who keeps lawns neat, roads safe, rules fair. But Karen? She twisted rules the way she twisted my grandma's arm. Aggressively, selfishly, and with zero remorse. I grew up in that neighborhood. I remembered when everyone used to sit on porches, wave at each other, share lemonade in the summer, complain about the heat together. Kids played in the streets, sprinklers ran on weekends. And nobody cared if your fence was 2 inches taller than someone else's. But then the HOA changed. Or rather, Karen changed it. She didn't start as the president. She started small, just another neighbor who liked to complain a little too often. First, she nitpicked about trash cans being left out too long. Then she complained about lawn heights. Then paint colors. Then pets. Then visitor parking. Each complaint earned her more attention, more influence, more visibility. Some people get addicted to power. Karen inhaled it like oxygen. By the time I moved out years ago, she'd already become vice president. By the time I returned to help take care of my grandma, she'd taken full control. And the neighborhood wasn't the same anymore. Gone were the kids playing outside. Gone were the late-night barbecues. Gone were the porch conversations. People lived quietly, cautiously, anxiously. Like one wrong move would summon Karen marching down the street with her phone out, recording violations. My grandma had always tried to stay out of trouble. She was the kind of person who baked pies for new neighbors, remembered everyone's birthdays, and watered plants for people when they traveled. She had kindness built into her bones. But it didn't matter. Karen didn't care about kindness. Karen cared about control. And my grandma was an easy target, older, slower, alone. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten until I moved back temporarily, planning to help her after her health started declining. She'd downplay everything, always brushing situations off with a laugh. "Oh, she's just strict," she said. "Oh, she just likes things neat," she said. "Oh, she's not that bad," she said. But I saw the truth. Every week, there was a new notice taped to her door. A new warning. A new fine. More harassment disguised as policy. One week, it was, "You left your trash bin out past 7 p.m., even though it wasn't true." Another week, it was, "Your lawn is overgrown, even though I had mowed it the day before." Another week, it was, "Unauthorized vehicle on premises," referring to my car, even though I was her grandson and clearly visiting. It had crossed into obsession. I remember one morning waking up and seeing Karen literally crouched next to my grandma's flower bed, measuring the distance between flowers like she was inspecting a crime scene. My grandma opened the door and asked, "Can I help you?" Karen stood up, brushing soil from her knees like she'd been disturbed. "Yes, your tulips are 5 inches outside the approved planting boundary." She said it like it was a felony. My grandma laughed, a gentle, confused laugh. "Honey, these tulips have been here 10 years. 10 years out of compliance," Karen snapped. "Consider this your official warning." That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about rules. This was about power. This was about Karen establishing dominance. Some people joined the HOA. Karen was the HOA. And everyone knew it. People didn't just avoid conflict with her. They avoided eye contact. They avoided being outside at the same time as her. They avoided walking their dogs near her house. They avoided parking even an inch sideways. They avoided hanging wreaths during holidays without triple-checking the rulebook. No one wanted to be her next target. But my grandma, she was a soft soul. She believed being patient with people made things better. And Karen took advantage of that. Things reached a new level when Karen became close with 2 new HOA board members, Stan, the treasurer, and Melissa, the secretary. Together, they formed a little trio of absolute authority. They were the kind of people who enjoyed making others uncomfortable if it meant feeling important. They enforced rules nobody had voted on. They created fines nobody agreed to. They changed regulations without notice. They assigned themselves power nobody challenged. Why? Because fear works. Silence works. And Karen made sure both were constant. The worst part? They hid behind shiny words like community safety, property value, and neighborhood standards. But everyone knew what it really was. A private kingdom with Karen wearing the crown. So, when she grabbed my grandma's wrist that day, when she twisted it like she was punishing her for daring to speak, none of it was out of character. It was the natural next step of an ego that had gone unchecked for years. The hospital visit that day was silent except for my grandma's occasional shaky breaths. I sat beside her bed, my fists clenched, anger boiling in my veins. Doctors confirmed what I already feared. Her arm was fractured. The break was clean but painful, especially for someone her age. "What happened?" the doctor asked gently. My grandma hesitated, looking at me, silently begging me not to start trouble. But I couldn't stay quiet. "An HOA member assaulted her," I said through clenched teeth. The doctor blinked. "Over what?" That was the problem. There was no what. The reason didn't matter. Karen didn't need a reason. Her authority, imagined or real, gave her permission in her own twisted mind. My grandma grabbed my hand and whispered, "Honey, don't escalate things." But I'd already made my decision. Because I wasn't just angry. I wasn't just protective. I wasn't just her grandson. I was someone Karen should never have crossed. Someone with a past she knew nothing about. A background she didn't expect. A skill set she'd never imagine. And the moment she broke my grandma's arm, she broke the last piece of restraint I had left. She thought she was untouchable. But she was about to learn. HOA rules don't protect you from consequences. Not when you've built your kingdom on fear. Not when you've hurt the wrong family. And not when the person you provoked is someone like me. Most people who know me don't really know me. Not the real me. Not the part of my life I left behind years ago, tucked away in memories I never planned to revisit. To the world, I'm just an ordinary guy who came back home to help his aging grandma. But Karen? She had no idea who she'd provoked. Because the truth is, before I returned to this quiet neighborhood, before I became the man standing beside my injured grandma, I lived a different life. A life built on discipline. A life built on danger. A life where hesitation wasn't allowed, where every decision had consequences, sometimes deadly ones. A life inside one of the most specialized units in the military. I hadn't told my grandma everything. I told her I served, yes, but I didn't tell her where, or how long, or what I did. She didn't need to carry the weight of those details, and I didn't need that world anymore. Or so I thought. But sitting in that hospital room, watching her sleep with her arm wrapped tightly in a cast, I felt something inside me shift, like a door slowly unlocking after being sealed shut for years. Because protecting my grandma wasn't optional. It was instinct. It was automatic. It was who I am at my core. And Karen had accidentally stepped directly into the path of that instinct. When I was younger, before I enlisted, I wasn't always the most controlled person. I had a short fuse. I got into fights. I didn't know how to channel anger into anything useful. The military changed that for me. They broke me down, rebuilt me, reshaped me. They taught me patience, strategy, precision, and most importantly, they taught me the value of preparation. You don't jump without thinking. You don't strike without assessing. You don't move without a plan. Those habits stayed with me long after I left service. But I never thought I would need them again, especially for something like this. An HOA bully? A neighborhood tyrant? A woman with a clipboard instead of a weapon? And yet here I was, because the thing people like Karen never understand is this. Some people walk through life pushing buttons they shouldn't, and eventually they push the wrong one. That night, after the hospital discharged my grandma, I took her home, settled her in her recliner, made her tea, and helped her take her pain medication. She kept apologizing, over and over. "I didn't want you to get stressed," she whispered, voice trembling. "You didn't do anything wrong." I told her, holding her hand gently, carefully, "You were hurt for no reason." She crossed a line. "You know how she is," she said softly. "I just didn't want trouble." But what she didn't understand, what I couldn't tell her, was that trouble was already here, and avoiding it wouldn't make it leave. Some enemies don't stop because you stay quiet. Some bullies don't stop because you back down. Some people like Karen only stop when someone stops them. When my grandma fell asleep, I stepped outside onto the porch. The night air was cool, silent, too calm for what had happened just hours earlier. I sat on the steps, elbows resting on my knees, staring at the driveway where she'd fallen. The crack of her arm echoed in my ears again. The look on her face, the fear, the helplessness, and beneath all of it, the tremor inside me that I hadn't felt in years. the soldier in me waking up. The next morning, I walked the neighborhood. Not to confront Karen. Not yet. I walked to observe. Old habits, old training, awareness, angles, patterns, movement. I studied the houses, the parked cars, the HOA office down the street, the pathways people avoided, the areas where security cameras pointed. I watched how residents behaved, how quickly they closed blinds when someone as intimidating as Karen walked by. This wasn't just an HOA. This was fear-based control. Everywhere I looked, I saw little signs of oppression. Things most people wouldn't notice unless they knew how to analyze environments the way I did. A mailbox slightly dented, likely from a confrontation. A door frame with chipped paint, handprints from forced notices being taped repeatedly. A neighbor who scanned the street 3 times before leaving her house, fear of being watched. Karen had built a system designed to make people feel monitored, evaluated, judged. But nothing is unbreakable. Not even her little kingdom. When I returned home, my grandma was awake, clutching her arm and trying, but failing to hide her pain. "How are you feeling?" I asked. "I'll be fine," she whispered, always trying to be strong. I sat beside her and took a deep breath. There were things I needed to say, but I couldn't tell her everything. Not the truth. Not the part about who I used to be. But I could tell her this much. I'm going to make sure nothing like this ever happens again. Her eyes widened slightly. "Honey, don't do anything dangerous." Dangerous. Funny word. If only she knew how many dangerous things I'd already survived. "I won't," I lied. "I'll handle it the right way." She nodded, trusting me, because she always did, and that trust felt heavier than any weight I carried overseas. Later that afternoon, I opened my old duffel bag, the one I promised myself I'd never open again. Inside were pieces of my past, a notebook filled with coded messages, old patches, a pair of gloves, a folded uniform, and photographs I hadn't looked at in years. Underneath it all was a small metal tag. My service tag. I ran my thumb across the engraved numbers. I wasn't planning to become that person again. But sometimes life doesn't give you a choice. Sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. I didn't want revenge. Not yet. Not without a plan. Revenge is emotional. Strategy is controlled. I wasn't going to just confront Karen. I wasn't going to shout or fight or throw accusations. That's what she expected. That's what she wanted. That's what she was prepared for. But here's what she wasn't prepared for. Someone who could think 10 steps ahead. Someone who knew how to dismantle abusive power structures. Someone who had taken down far more dangerous people than a suburban bully. She thought she broke an old woman's arm and would get away with it. But she didn't break just an arm. She awakened something she should have left alone. My grandma didn't know my whole past. Most people never would. And Karen? Karen was about to learn the truth the hard way. Because the secret I never told anyone was this. I wasn't just some grandson. I wasn't just a visitor. And I wasn't someone she could intimidate. I was trained for threats far greater than anything she could ever imagine. And I was ready. The morning after my grandma's injury, the house was quiet, too quiet. She sat in her chair by the window, her arm in a sling, staring outside the way someone stares at a world they no longer feel safe in. That sight alone was enough to make something inside me lock into place. I'd been patient long enough. I'd been silent long enough. I'd watched her suffer long enough. And Karen? Karen was out there somewhere, probably sipping her coffee and telling herself she did nothing wrong. But not today. Today was the day everything changed. Not with fists. Not with yelling. Not with chaos. No, that's what people like Karen expect. They expect emotional reactions they can twist. They expect anger they can weaponize against you. But the one thing they are never prepared for is calculated action. The first step, information. I left the house, quietly letting my grandma rest, and walked toward the HOA office at the end of the cul-de-sac. It wasn't really an office, just a converted garage behind Stan's house, the HOA treasurer. People rarely went there. Everything was done through emails, warnings taped on doors, or Karen marching around like a hall monitor with too much free time. The garage door was open. Inside, Stan sat at a desk surrounded by binders, rows and rows of them, all color-coded. HOA financials, HOA rules, HOA violations, HOA complaints. All that power, all that control, all in one place. I knocked on the side of the doorframe. Stan nearly jumped out of his chair. "Oh, hey, you scared me." "Didn't mean to," I said calmly. "Mind if I ask you a few questions?" His eyes darted nervously, the way someone looks when they've been caught doing something they shouldn't. About what?" "About Karen." The way his expression tightened told me everything. Fear, confusion, guilt, 3 signs of a man who knows something is wrong, but lacks the courage to fight it. He sat up straighter, forcing his voice to steady. "Karen runs the HOA. Anything specific?" "Yes," I said. "The assault on my grandma." His face drained of color. I heard something happened, but I can't get involved in disputes." "Disputes?" I stepped closer. "My grandma's arm was broken." He flinched, not from fear of me, but from the truth. I didn't raise my voice, didn't threaten him, didn't need to. Silence says more than shouting ever could. After a moment, he leaned back inside. "Look, Karen has a lot of influence. She's strict, but she means well." "Strict doesn't involve breaking bones," I said. He looked away, then whispered something I didn't expect. "You're not the first family she's hurt." That sentence burned through me like fire. "What do you mean?" Stan swallowed. "We've had complaints. Lots of them. About harassment, threats, physical intimidation. But she handles most issues before they reach the board. And people are scared to file reports. They don't want retaliation." "And what about you?" I asked. "You're the treasurer. Why don't you do something?" He hesitated, then said the only honest thing so far. "Because Karen doesn't let us." There it was, the truth behind the entire operation. The HOA wasn't a board of elected members. It was Karen's puppet show. Everyone else was just too afraid, or too weak, to challenge her. But they didn't have to, because I would. "Stan," I said, leaning closer, "I need access to every complaint filed in the last 3 years. Every rule she changed. Every fine she issued." He stared at me. "Why?" "Because I'm going to bring her down. Legally." His eyes widened. "You can't go up against Karen. She'll crush you." I smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. She has no idea who she's dealing with. The second step, preparing the plan. I spent the next 4 hours combing through the HOA records, scanning pages, taking photos of violations, rule changes, financial discrepancies, and missing signatures. The deeper I looked, the worse it got. Karen had fined elderly residents illegally, approved rule changes without proper voting, mishandled HOA funds, manipulated records, ignored multiple safety complaints, threatened residents with eviction, and physically intimidated at least 3 others. She was running a personal empire, one built on fear, lies, and control. But empires fall, especially when the foundation is rotten. And I was going to be the one to tip it over. The third step, confrontation without confrontation. Karen's house sat at the top of the neighborhood hill, a symbolic position she no doubt enjoyed. From her porch, she could watch the entire cul-de-sac like a hawk searching for prey. She was outside, watering her plants when I walked toward her. She saw me coming and stiffened. Good. Fear suits her. But I kept my posture relaxed, hands visible, step slow, expression calm. The calmness that makes people more scared than yelling ever could. "Morning, Karen," I said. Her voice wavered slightly. "If you're here to talk about yesterday, I've already filed the report. Your grandmother attacked me." I nodded slowly. "I know what you filed." She smirked. "Good. Then you should be prepared for the consequences." "Oh, I am," I replied. "Very prepared." Something in my tone made her take a step back. "Karen, you made 3 major mistakes," I continued. 1, you hurt my grandma. 2, you lied about it. And 3, I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You assumed you were dealing with someone powerless. Her jaw tightened. "Are you threatening me?" "No," I said. "I don't need to threaten you." I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos, complaints, signatures, rule violations, financial records. Her eyes widened, panic flickering across her perfectly composed face. Where did you get those? You should be more careful about who you intimidate, I said. Fear works, until it doesn't. And your little empire? It's held together with tape. She stuttered. This is illegal. You can't have. Everything I cut in is legal, documented, photographed, and backed up. Then I delivered the final blow, and I'm taking all of this to the state housing board. Karen's face hardened, then softened, then cracked. You can't do this, she whispered. I can, I said, and I will. Her facade crumbled. The arrogant smirk vanished. The queen lost her crown, right there on her own front lawn. I turned to walk away, but paused. One more thing, I said quietly. If you ever come near my grandmother again, even once, you won't have to worry about HOA complaints. I didn't finish the sentence. I didn't need to. Her trembling said she understood. This was the day I decided to fight back. Not with fists, but with precision. And Karen? She was just beginning to realize the storm that was coming for her. The emergency HOA meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m., but by 6:30, the parking lot was already full. Cars lined both sides of the street, people stood in small circles whispering, and everyone kept glancing toward the entrance like they were waiting for storm to hit. In a way, they were, because tonight wasn't a normal meeting. Tonight was Judgment Day for Karen, and the whole neighborhood knew it. When I pulled up with my grandma, her arm in a fresh cast, her face tired but determined, the entire place went quiet. People stepped aside like they were watching a movie walk into real life. Some looked angry for us. Some looked nervous. And a few looked scared, probably the HOA members who enabled her for years. I opened the car door and helped Grandma out slowly. You sure you're ready for this? I asked. She exhaled deeply. Honey, I've lived through wars, hurricanes, and your grandpa's snoring. I can handle a room full of cowards. Her humor, broken arm and all, made me smile. Inside, the room was buzzing. HOA members sat behind a long table like it was a courtroom. Karen sat at the far end, arms crossed, chin high, acting like a victim. She didn't look at us. Not once. But her husband was pacing behind her, red-faced, panicked. Good. That meant the truth was catching up. I chose a seat front and center. I wanted her to see me. I wanted her to feel everything she never expected to face. At exactly 7 p.m., HOA President Bill cleared his throat into the microphone. Everyone, thank you for attending this special session. We're here to discuss a serious incident involving member Karen Whitfield and resident Mrs. Thompson. Murmurs rose. Cameras came out. People started recording. Bill continued, We ask that everyone remain respectful. Grandma spoke first. Her voice was steady, but the emotion behind it shook the room. I've lived peacefully in this neighborhood for 7 years, she began. I never caused trouble. I always followed rules. But on Tuesday, Karen grabbed me, twisted my arm, and broke it, because she said my garden hose was crossing into the sidewalk. The room erupted. Gasps, anger. Someone in the back yelled, Are you serious? Karen snapped, She's lying. She swung the hose at me first. Grandma didn't even flinch. I'm 78 years old. I can barely lift a gallon of milk. But you think I swung a heavy hose at you? Karen hesitated, but only for a second before doubling down. I feared for my safety. People laughed, out loud. It was that ridiculous. Bill sighed heavily and turned to me. Do you want to speak? I stood up slowly, letting the room settle before I said anything. My grandma didn't pick this fight. She didn't escalate anything. She didn't hurt anyone. She walked into her own front yard, her space, where she has every right to breathe without being attacked. Karen scoffed. Oh, please. I raised a hand. You've spoken enough. The audience muttered approval. I continued. You grabbed her. You twisted her arm. You broke it. And then you threatened her with HOA fines to justify your violence. Karen's face turned red. I never. And I said, pulling out my phone, "You forgot there are security cameras in our yard." A collective gasp spread through the room. Karen froze, dead still, because she knew. She finally realized she had been so busy being aggressive, she didn't notice the small camera in the corner of our yard. I pressed play. The video was clear, loud, and devastating. Karen lunged. Karen grabbed her. Karen twisted her arm. Karen shoved her down. The audio captured everything, even her saying, "You think rules don't apply to you? I'll show you rules." There was no debate, no confusion, no excuses. It was the truth, unfiltered and undeniable. When the video ended, the room fell into a shocked silence, so heavy it felt like time froze. Karen's husband covered his face. Karen tried one last desperate attempt, her voice trembling. This is edited. He's manipulating." Bill slammed his hand on the table. "Enough." Karen flinched like the word itself hit her. "For years," Bill said, "you've harassed residents. You've issued biased fines. You've abused your position. We've received dozens of complaints, and we ignored them because we thought you were just doing your job." He paused. "But this is criminal." Karen's mouth dropped open. Criminal. That word hit her harder than anything else. Bill continued, "Effective immediately, you are removed from the HOA board." The audience cheered. Karen shook her head violently. "You can't do that. I run this HOA." "Not anymore," Bill said calmly. And he added, turning to Grandma, "We support pressing charges if you choose to." Karen's eyes widened in terror. That's not fair. You can't ruin my life over one accident." I stepped forward. It wasn't an accident. It was a choice. Finally, she broke. Tears poured down her face, maybe fear, maybe guilt, maybe both. Security escorted her out while she screamed insults, excuses, wild accusations. But nobody listened. Nobody cared. The woman who ruled the neighborhood with an iron fist was now powerless, exposed, and alone. When she was gone, Bill turned back to the room. "We also want to apologize to you," he said to my grandma. "We failed you. And we promise this won't happen again." For the first time since the incident, Grandma looked relieved. After the meeting, dozens of neighbors surrounded us, offering help, food, support rides, anything she needed. People who stayed silent for years finally found their voices. As we walked out into the cool night air, Grandma slipped her good hand in mine. "You stood up for me today," she whispered. "You've stood up for me my whole life," I said. "It was my turn." But just when I thought the nightmare was over, a police car pulled up beside us. The officer stepped out and said, "Are you the family involved in the incident with Karen Whitfield? We need to talk. Something new just came up." Grandma and I exchanged a look, because apparently our story wasn't finished yet. The blue and red lights washed over the parking lot as the police officer approached us. The air felt colder, heavier, as if the universe wasn't done with us yet. My grandma tightened her grip on my hand, her cast resting against her chest. She looked tired. She looked ready to go home. But trouble wasn't ready to let her go. The officer stopped in front of us, flipping open a notepad. "Sir, ma'am, we need a moment of your time. Something has come to our attention regarding Ms. Karen Whitfield." I exhaled slowly. "What now?" I asked, trying not to sound impatient. The officer lowered his voice. "She reported a burglary." I blinked. "A burglary?" "Yes, at her home. She claims something was stolen, and, according to her, your family might be involved." Grandma gasped softly, outraged. "We just left a meeting proving she attacked me." The officer raised a hand calmly. "I'm aware. And that's exactly why we need clarity. The timing is suspicious." It wasn't just suspicious, it was desperate. Karen had lost her HOA throne, her power, her reputation. Now she was trying to drag us down with her. What did she say was stolen? I asked. He hesitated. "A folder." "A folder?" "Not jewelry. Not electronics. Not money. A folder." The officer nodded. "She claims it contained personal documents that could destroy her life." Her words. Grandma straightened, her voice icy. We didn't go near her house. That woman is inventing things. I believe you, the officer replied, but I still need you both to come down to the station tomorrow morning. Tomorrow, meaning tonight, wasn't the night to fight. Tonight was the calm before another storm. We went home, exhausted but refusing to be shaken. I helped Grandma into bed and stayed in the living room, the glow of the lamp warming the silence. But my mind wouldn't quiet down. A stolen folder? Documents that could destroy her life? And she pointed to us? None of it made sense. Unless the documents she claimed were stolen weren't actually stolen. What if she hid them? What if she forged this entire thing to portray herself as the victim? That woman had lived on lies for years. Lies, intimidation, manipulation. The folder was another strategy, another lifeline for her sinking ship. But I didn't know yet how deep her secrets ran. The next morning, we arrived at the police station. The waiting room was filled with buzzing fluorescent lights and tired faces. Grandma sat beside me, her cast resting on her lap, her expression calm but stern. She wasn't scared. She was done being pushed around. The officer from last night approached us. "Thank you for coming," he said, leading us to an interview room. "Before we begin, I want you both to know you're not suspects. We just need your statement." Relief brushed over Grandma's face. We sat down, and the officer opened a file. "Ms. Whitfield claims the folder contained HOA financial documents." My eyes widened. Financial documents? Why would those destroy her life? The officer leaned back. "Because the documents show unauthorized withdrawals, forged signatures, and missing funds." My jaw tightened. Grandma whispered, "Oh my God, she was stealing from the HOA?" The officer nodded. "It appears so, but we need to confirm its authenticity and whether the folder even existed." He continued, "Last night, right after the meeting, Ms. Whitfield tried entering the HOA office. Security stopped her. She claimed she was retrieving her own documents." He shook his head, "But cameras caught her trying to force open the locked cabinet where HOA financial records are kept." The puzzle pieces snapped together. Karen wasn't trying to retrieve the folder. She was trying to destroy it. And when she failed, she panicked, made up a burglary, blamed us, tried to spin the narrative again. The officer sighed. This investigation just shifted from a neighborhood dispute to possible embezzlement. Grandma and I exchanged looks. This was bigger than we thought. "Do you think she'll try to hurt us again?" Grandma asked, her voice trembling slightly. The officer softened. "We're assigning extra patrols in your area. She cannot legally contact you or come near your property. A restraining order is being processed." That gave Grandma some comfort, but I could still feel the unease crawling beneath my skin. Karen wasn't the type to give up. She was the type to burn everything down when cornered. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the houses and shadows stretched across the street, I stepped outside to clear my head. The neighborhood felt different, quiet, tense, almost holding its breath. That's when I saw it. Across the street, leaning against a tree, stood Karen. Not screaming, not threatening, not hysterical like the night before, just staring at our house. Her hair was a mess, her eyes red, mascara streaking her cheeks. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days, someone drowning in her own lies. When our eyes met, she stepped forward. "You think you won?" she said, her voice hoarse. I kept my distance. "Go home, Karen. You are violating the restraining order." "I didn't steal anything," she blurted out. "I didn't take money. I didn't hurt your grandmother. You manipulated everything." I cut her off. "The camera does not lie." She shook her head, tears streaming. "You don't understand. I was trying to protect my family." Protect her family? That was new. I stayed silent, letting her talk. She stepped closer, desperation dripping from her every word. "They're going to arrest me. They're going to take everything. My husband doesn't know. My kids don't know. I was trying to," she choked. "I just wanted control. Everything felt like it was slipping." I didn't speak. I didn't comfort her. I didn't hate her. I just watched her unravel. "Please," she whispered, "tell them you stole it. Tell them it was you." Just say you found the folder and threw it away. I stared at her, stunned. She really thought I'd destroy my life to save hers. No, I said quietly. Your actions are yours. Your consequences are yours. She sobbed harder, then suddenly shouted, You ruined me. You ruined everything. Lights flicked on in nearby houses. Neighbors peeked out through blinds. Karen backed away, shaking, frantic. It should have been you. Not me. You don't belong here. And then she sprinted to her car, slammed the door, and drove off recklessly into the night. I stood frozen, watching her taillights disappear. Grandma came to the door, concerned. What happened? I turned to her slowly. It's not over, I said. Karen's losing everything, and people like her don't break quietly. She nodded, eyes full of worry. But beneath that worry, something else glimmered. Strength. Because we weren't alone anymore. The truth was out. People had seen her for who she really was. Still, a storm was coming. One last confrontation. One final twist. One more truth waiting to explode. And we were right in the center of it. If you stayed with me through this entire story, thank you. You didn't just watch a video, you stood beside my grandma, you stood against injustice, and you became part of a community that refuses to stay silent. Before you go, I want to ask you for one thing. Backhand index pointing right. If you believe in standing up for family, hit that like button. Backhand index pointing right. If you believe people like Karen should be held accountable, share this video. Backhand index pointing right. And if you want more real, raw, twist-filled stories just like this one, make sure you subscribe and turn on all notifications. Your support doesn't just grow this channel, it gives a voice to people who are too scared to speak up, too hurt to fight back, or too alone to stand on their own. Comment below. Speech balloon. What would you have done if this happened to your family? I read every single comment, and your voice matters more than you know. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story. Stay safe. Stay strong. Stay aware.